So it's Danny Flexon here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined by my good friend and, of course, the Zone boxing presenter, Ade Oladipo. God, what am I doing with my voice? How you doing, mate? You good?
Not bad, Dan. Just enjoying the fights we're getting at the moment, sort of away from sort of working on the events, just as a boxing fan. So I feel like we're being treated at the moment. So yeah, enjoying it.
Now, I saw your tweet last night saying basically it was nothing to do with you denying all responsibility for the near brawl between Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois ahead of their clash on the 21st of September. Tickets have gone on sale today. I believe the queue is tens of thousands of people deep already. Don't want to make anyone out there lose hope, but you'll be in for a long wait if you are going to get tickets. But yeah, let's talk about the sit down that happened before it all kicked off because we've only seen that segment so far. Did you have any indication that it was going to be quite spicy?
Yes, it was always going to be spicy between Frank and Eddie, and that was unusual for me in the first place. That when they said it's going to be Frank, Eddie, AJ, and Dubois, I was like, why? And I said, look, Dubois is capable of talking now. You don't need Frank there, but I feel like Frank and Eddie added to it, and Frank was kind of his spokesperson. Like Dubois wasn't really saying much, but when he did speak, you kind of felt it. You know what I mean? He's a man of very few words, but when he does speak, you kind of like, okay, you kind of take a step back. And I noticed even when Frank and Eddie were kind of going back and forth, for a few seconds, I'll kind of take a step back in my chair and I'd look at AJ and Dubois and they were locked on with each other, like eyeball to eyeball. I was like, oh, okay, like this is, shall I stir this a little bit or shall I just kind of wait and see how this plays out? So I felt it was simmering. I didn't think it would get to that where, security have to get involved. But we've seen it with these face-offs. Sometimes they do need to kind of step in. And I almost felt like AJ maybe looked at Dubois like, you're a young kid. And Dubois was like, I'm not a young kid. I'm a big guy now. And I liked it. I liked what Dubois did. I liked the fact he kind of stood up to him and said, no, you're not going to intimidate me. And Dubois was ready to go.
When Dubois actually said, let's go, and obviously I know Frank quickly jumped in to correct him. I spoke to Frank yesterday and he was quite proud, it seemed, of Dubois for initiating the confrontation. He said, he didn't take a backward step. And to be honest, he started it as well. And he seemed quite happy about that. Do you think for some people that's answered some questions about Dubois and his mentality?
Yeah, I do. And I think you almost have to go back a few months to the Jarrell Miller fight. And I think we saw it there, where you had this big bully from America that, speaks to speak, 100 pounds more than Daniel Dubois. And he was trying to bully Dubois, and Dubois stood up for him. And you almost felt on that stage in Saudi Arabia, I remember at the press conference, I remember looking at Frank, and he almost did smile at him like, okay, finally, you can do this yourself. And then we saw it against Hrgovic when Hrgovic tried to bully him as well. And it's like, he's not accepting it anymore. I feel like a lot of these fighters have maybe tried to kind of pick on him a little bit because he doesn't speak as well as others. And he isn't, out there sort of throwing insults. So I feel like they've tried to bully him a bit. And he's now kind of within himself. And I don't know if that's a Dubois now being 26, 27, or that's a Don Charles factor. But I like this version of Daniel. And he should be confident as well. He should be sort of comfortable within himself. He's had two really good wins back to back. So I almost feel like this is a different version of Daniel. And we almost need to remove the Joe Joyce version from us and the Kevin Arena version, because this guy right now is a top heavyweight, and I think he knows it.
So just to go back to the segment we've seen, Daniel says, let's go. Warren says, not until September the 21st. You say, nah, not with me in the middle, which could have easily been your last words. So
Yeah.
let's be
Yeah.
grateful that wasn't the case. When you said that, how concerned were you that it was about to actually physically kick off?
Oh, I could see it. I could see in AJ's eyes. I've sat with AJ sort of, I don't know, hundreds of times now, and I can almost see when he's just very relaxed and calm, or when he's pissed off. I can just see when he's annoyed and angry. And I saw that and I was like, oh. And when Dubois said, you're not going to intimidate me, it was almost like they were okay saying, let's go, let's go. Fighters always say it, let's go now then. It never really happens. But soon as AJ mentioned about that smack around the head with a chair and Dubois responded, you can't intimidate me, I knew then that this is going to go. And I've always wanted my Derek Chisora, Dillian White moment. So I was like, oh, it's coming. It's on a face off. But I knew the security would jump in. But I knew from as soon as Dubois said, you can't intimidate me, I knew it was going to go from there.
Why was that the trigger, do you think?
Again, I don't know if AJ just expected him to back down. I
Mm.
remember AJ kind of did this with Dominic Brazil, and he did it a little bit at the Hellenius way in as well, where AJ almost tries to impose his size. I'm AJ, I'm the big guy, and I feel like he almost expects some fighters to kind of say, okay, cool, you are the A side, you're the man here, you're the cash cow. I'm going to leave it all until September 21st. But Dubois was like, no, I'm the heavyweight champion of the world. You know, I'm the guy. And he didn't back down. So I think it maybe surprised AJ. And that's where AJ thought, okay, we got to maybe take this to another level. Let's ramp this up a bit. And he stood up. And then, but as you see in the footage, Dubois stood up immediately as well. So neither backed down. Eddie liked it. Frank was smiling. Then Frank got worried. I saw it in his eye. Was like, okay, this is good, but then this has gone too far. But I think it was good. There's a few people reached out to me and said, was it scripted or WWE? And I'm like, trust me, maybe you've got to see the other 30 minutes when it comes out, but you could see it boiling up. You could see the tension simmering between the two. Nothing, even if they told Dubois to start something, Dubois, that's going in one ear and out the other. But Dubois is not going to even remember that. So yeah, certainly not scripted. These two just kind of got on each other's nerves and it kind of boiled up.
And what was it like kind of getting things back on track after that? So was there still quite a block of filming after that happened?
No, we were lucky. That was right at the end.
Okay.
So I think we had probably done about 35, 40 minutes. And in my head, that's kind of enough because they'll probably trim it to about 20 minutes anyway. So that was right at the end where I was going to kind of just do my cell. And I think I'd asked AJ a question about, okay, let's wrap this up. You know, does it mean more now the IBF heavyweight belts on the line? And that was his response when he kind of said, I just want to fight. So I was wrapping it up to both where I was going to go AJ, then I was going to go Dubois, then Frank, then Eddie. So we were right at the end. So it was good anyway. It was almost a perfect way to end it rather than me just kind of do another sell, buy it on DAZN, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like that was almost the best way to kind of just rip this thing up.
I'm guessing you didn't ask for a handshake in the end.
Yeah, no handshake. No hand. Honestly, Dubois, AJ, I feel like AJ calmed down very quickly. I thought when AJ kind of stepped up to Dubois and said, look, I don't take disrespect lightly or something like that.
Yeah.
I think AJ had already calmed down from then. Dubois, though, honestly, he was walking around and he was doing this with his hands. He was still very, very pumped. So I felt like Dubois probably took a lot longer to calm down than AJ. I feel like Dubois, once it goes, and I've seen it now with him, with Miller and Hrgovic, when it goes with Dubois, it goes. Whereas I think AJ's maybe been there, seen it, done it. So he calmed down quickly, but Dubois, mate, honestly, that was my first time really seeing Dubois go. And it's quite an intimidating sight. Dubois, maybe not as tall as AJ, but he's as thick and as wide. And, you know, I've seen him since he was 17. And I feel like I've just seen a man now. He's not that kid anymore. And I need to kind of remind myself that he isn't that kid. He's a killer in the ring. So yeah, he was on his thing.
Do you think that's a similar mindset to AJ in that he was taken aback because he's used to Dubois as a 17-year-old kid from back in the day at GB?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know how much they talk. I don't know if they're friendly with each other. But I even think AJ almost has to, I don't know. Look, AJ's been thinking for the last 2-3 years, it's been Wilder, it's been Fury, there's been talk of a Parker rematch, there's been Ngannou. There's been no conversation about Dubois. And I almost feel like with AJ, he has to remind himself that this isn't the young kid you sparred when he was 17, 18. This is a whole different beast now. Whereas Dubois is always, because AJ was for a long time the king of British boxing, he's always maybe looked at AJ as the target, as the, okay, that's what I'm aiming for. Whereas AJ's never looked at Dubois. So I always feel like AJ needs to kind of remind himself, and I'm sure he will, he's got Ben and Lee Wiley behind him, remind himself that this isn't the young kid anymore. This isn't the guy that took the knee against Joe Joyce. This isn't even the guy, I think, that quit, quote unquote, against Alexander Usyk. This is a completely different fighter.
Now, he's reacted in the moment, Dubois. He probably hasn't processed it. But will his team, the likes of Frank Warren and Don Charles, the experienced heads, will they be telling him, you've got under AJ's skin there?
Yeah, 100%. They will love that because, you know, you watch it back and I've seen some comments and people say AJ tried to bully him and Dubois didn't accept it. However you want to take it, Dubois stood up for himself. And I think that's what Don wants to see, right? That's what we want to see with Dubois. We want to see him kind of, no, I'm not accepting that. You can't talk to me like however you want to talk to me. I am the champion. You know, I'm a top 7, top 8 heavyweight myself now. You know, I'm here not because, you know, the British public have kind of forced me into this position. I've put myself in this position by beating Filip Hrgović. So I've beaten the boogeyman. So I almost feel like Don and Frank will be happy. And Daniel's dad. Daniel's dad, we know, plays a big part in it as well. And he'll probably think, yes, my son won't be intimidated. So I think that team, the Dubois team, will be so happy with that outcome. However people type about it, they'll look from what they've done and think, okay, AJ is a little bit rattled here, a little bit. And, you know, you have to take those small percentages because this boxing, as you know, Dan, is about fine margins and you take what you can take. So if I'm Daniel, I go home, I put my feet up and I smile for a few minutes and watch all the clips back of me not backing down because I think he should take something from it.
And on the flip side of that, how will Daniel asserting himself play with AJ's mindset?
I do wonder if AJ, if there is this master plan. Again, he's got two very, very analytical people behind him in Lee Wiley and Ben Davison, and they'll look at everything and they'll think, okay, maybe we do make him a bit more aggressive. So when he fights you, he comes straight out the bat. And I think we saw that against Hrgović, and it left so many openings for Hrgović, and Hrgović just couldn't capitalize. So maybe they are trying to get an aggressive Daniel Dubois. Maybe that's what they're trying to do. Mind games are so important part of the sport. So maybe there is a bit of mind games there because it didn't need to be said that I'm going to smash this chair over your head. So you wonder if there is something in the background, but I don't know. Look, AJ is so experienced. He's 34 now. He's not a kid. He's had so many big fights. He's been in there with people that talk to him, people that don't talk to him. So he's seen it all. So maybe for AJ, this is just another day in the park. But I do wonder if there's something else playing behind the scenes.
And as a keen boxing fan yourself, how does sitting in between those two guys, getting to know them a bit better and their dynamic with each other, change your view of the fight itself?
I think I was always confident when this fight was made that Daniel would make it a great fight. I wasn't one of those people that, oh, because it's not Wilder or Fury, that's the end of the world. I kind of said to myself, I look at Dubois' last 3 opponents, Usyk, Miller, and Hrgović, and I look at AJ's last 3 opponents of Helenius, Ottervolin, and Ngannou, and I know who's fought the better opponents by a country mile. So I've always felt like Dubois is ready for this, but I wanted to see what he would be like being alongside AJ. It's one thing, you know, saying you want AJ, but how are you going to react when that man is sitting across from you? And he handled it so well. Honestly, like it's a completely different Daniel Dubois, and I needed to see that. I needed to see someone that just wasn't happy to be here and take part. And I just wonder, you know, going to Poland and fighting Usyk in front of 60,000 in that experience. So he's had that experience now of a big fight, being the main event on a big fight as well. So I wanted to see whether or not he was going to handle all the media, and he handled it fine. I did a sit-down interview with him as well. He was fantastic. You know, all this thing about Dubois can't talk. Look, he's not Tyson Fury. You know, he's not Gerald Miller, but he can speak. And I'm confident that Dubois, having spoke to Don Charles as well, is going to put up a really, really good performance. I don't think it will be enough, Dan, but I think it's going to be a really good fight.
And what about yourself, the DAZN presenter in an era when we're getting huge card after huge card, and not just in Saudi now, obviously their Riyadh season are going to the US and then coming here. It must be amazing for you to be in that position because you signed up, you're a huge boxing fan anyway, but you can't have known when you signed on with the DAZN that it was going to explode the way it has.
No, not at all. I remember, like, what was it now? 3 years ago, I think, it'd be 3 years and a couple of months when they said, I'm just going to do a little magazine show once a week on YouTube, bit like this with Tony Bellew. That was it. It was one day a week. So to see what's happened, and look, Riyadh season's just changed everything because you're at these events like, as you mentioned, we've got Crawford Madrimov, and you look at what's on the undercard. I mean, Tim Tszyu falls out and upsteps Bacoli, Jared Anderson as a filler. And that's just crazy. I mean, that's one of the best heavyweights you can make. And then we were sitting with Turkey yesterday, a few of us, and what his plans and ideas for cards. So for October, and he's desperate to get Canelo on the October card, which is insane. He's talking about a new way potentially fighting on a card. Like, you're hearing some of this, and it's almost just, you covered the sport for so long. This just couldn't happen. You get a good main event, and then because the main event takes all the money, you don't really get a great undercard. Now you're getting a very good main event and some very good undercard fights that could easily top small hall shows or even bigger shows. So yeah, it's a dream. It's a dream as a fight fan, first and foremost, just to be at these cards and see these cards announced and then see the reaction to them as well is good, because sometimes when you see a card announced and you read the comments and the reaction is like, ah, and then you've got to try and sell it and you're like, oh, I can't really sell this because it's not really what I know fans want. But now you just honestly put your feet up because you know it sells itself.
When you're in that room and Turkey's talking about all the massive fights he wants to make, are you in there pitching? Are there any personal favourites that you're trying to get on a card?
Yeah, I've said to him, like, when this one, I was like, okay, look, he mentioned Benavidez Beterbiev obviously for October. And I said, look, Beterbiev gets injured, surely you have to, no disrespect to Malik Zinad, but surely you kind of have to have someone as a standby. I said, Benavidez has to get ready, surely. But surely you have to tempt David Benavidez to step up. And he said, yep. And I said, Javonte Davis said, yep, we're trying to do that. We've got a good relationship now with Al Heyman. There's obviously a few PBC Al Heyman fighters on this August LA card.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I feel like we can chuck anything at him now. Like things that just didn't like, oh, you know, what about this one, this one? No, he's desperate, obviously, to make Canelo Crawford. That's the one he wants to make, I think, more than anything. But I feel like you could chuck everything. He even mentioned Alexander Usyk coming back down to cruiserweight after Fury and fighting off Pataya. So he's got these weird dream fights in his head that just, for years, you would have laughed at. But for him, he's very, very serious, and he thinks he can make any fight you want. He thinks he can chuck money at it and make it. And he's not silly. Look, he's a businessman, first and foremost, so he has to make some sort of profit back. But ultimately, one thing he did say, Dan, was that boxing, he thinks, is still far behind UFC. And it's almost like a football club being taken over and you've just got to spend as much as possible just to bridge the gap so quickly. And I think he realizes that he has to put on these mega events just to bridge the gap. And then I think it's going to level out a little bit.
Just before I let you go, just on yourself, how do you feel you've developed and progressed as a presenter and as a journalist during your time at DAZN? Because as you said, it's been almost 3 years now.
Yeah, it's a tough one, that, because I feel like I've done every role. So I've been the guy that gets in the ring. I've done the one that hosts the show, the weekly shows with DAZN, the interviews, the face-offs. So I feel like I'm a jack of all trades, and I almost need to remind myself I don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. So I almost feel like I've got to pick one role. But it's difficult because DAZN asked me to do all of them. I think I'm improving. I think the difference with me and maybe other presenters, I'm trying to think, is that I'm a boxing fan. I'm not just a presenter that's kind of just in there and then has to kind of learn the sport. I'm as a boxing fan first and then a presenter. So my boxing knowledge is good. I just have to always improve on the presenting side, but we're getting there. We're getting there. I'm still super nervous when I do these big shows. Honestly, my heart is going dum, 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 dum. It's going through the roof with some of them. It's a pinch me moment when you're doing a Canelo show or these shows in Saudi or that interview in the ring with Fury and Usyk. But I don't know, my style's very different. I used to try and look at other presenters and maybe try and nick their styles a little bit, but I feel like I'm comfortable with me. I just need to refine me a little bit. But we've made improvements. I remember watching something I did a couple of years ago and thinking, geez, what am I doing? So we're always making improvements, and I think we're always going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back to 2 years ago and you thought you were exactly the same, you'd be thinking, what have I been doing for the last 2 years? So, I mean,
Exactly.
there's a positive in that, isn't there?
Yeah, no, there is. And I mean, yeah, ultimately, I'm trying to think of the ideal. Ultimately, I still think I want to host the biggest shows. So I don't want to be the backstage report. You don't know, I'll take them all.
Yeah,
but ultimately, sure. you want to host those big ones because you watch back in a few years and it's you hosting them or you getting in the ring and asking, like me getting in the ring and asking Fury and Usyk, that even though it was all carnage, that's going to be for me remembered for a long time. So it's those moments that you just feel lucky with. Like it's just, who could have predicted this a couple of years ago? It's incredible.
Great stuff. Well, we're really happy for you, of course.
Hey, Dan, appreciate it, brother.
And yeah, really appreciate your time today as well. Enjoy your weekend. And yeah, let's look forward to the big fight in September.
Indeed. Big one. Big. By the way, it's pretty much sold out already, which is insane. I looked just now. I thought, let me just chop myself.
So if anyone's watching, don't log on.
Like 40,000. I was like, 40,000. So Turkey was like, he wants it. I think he says it's going to be 100,000.
100,
but
yeah.
they've spoken to the London mayor, and they're even willing to take the fine if it goes past 11, which I believe is 100,000 every 15 minutes. He joked and he said, we'll take 2 hours. It's 2 hours. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy.
Great stuff. Ade, cheers, mate. Really appreciate it.
Top man, man. Yeah, that's
Take
right.
care.